Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. Welcome to Shifting Perspectives. If you are new to my channel, I am a philosopher, psychologist, sociologist of 30 years. I am talking about inspiration today. I was thinking about Tony Robbins, and when I give public speeches, I'm told by many people that I speak as well as him. And I don't know how to inspire people. I don't. I have to comprehend the theory in order to do that. So I'm going, I have a really powerful resource and I need to figure out how to channel that resource and use it. And in order for me to do that, I have to understand the theory. So we're going to go to the theory. Inspiration. Now, I've watched Tony Robbins, and I remember that when I first saw him, it was an inspirational video I got through my marketing class that I took about last December. So yeah, about a year ago. And my manager sent it over to me. I watched it and I went, wow, okay. For the record, just so I have my consistency straight, because hypocrisy is something I do not appreciate or like, and I don't want to look hypocritical or have people thinking I'm hypocritical. Yes, I went to a marketing class. Yes, I was hired. I didn't make a single sale. I didn't do anything. I just took the class to learn sales and psychology and sales. So this is what I am noticing and reflecting on regarding inspiration. He does a lot of yous, which is fantastic. And I notice that there's two other places where we hear you a lot. So Tony Robbins says you. So inspiration. He says you got to. He says that a lot. You gotta care. He does a lot of that. The other thing that I noticed I hear you a lot is, well, I don't hear it a lot, so I'll break this down even further. My neuroscientist friend, Maury, he explained that when you are doing any kind of positive affirmations, scientific evidence has proven that there is zero anything going into our brains when we hear the statements, I am. Now, that was interesting when he said that to me. He said, if you want to change the way your mind thinks, use the words, you are. See, isn't this interesting? And I went, fascinating. Why? And I figured out why, and that's what we're covering, but it has to be logical. So he said, I am has nothing. He says, of all the studies we've done, I am does nothing. So if you're doing any kind of positive affirmation, you have to hear the words, you are. So that's a little check, like bookmark that. Then let's go over to psychology. Actually, let's talk philosophy, because philosophy is better than psychology. So here is what I noticed in philosophy, that we're going to pull from philosophy and psychology. It's the same thing anyway. So here's what we're going to do. You've got your triangle. You've got your I of I, your U of I. Now, I want to talk about the U of I for a minute. Human beings' learning center comes from role model. Role model, mimic, and repetition. But before we get to repetition, we do role model and mimic. Now, we don't stop doing role model and mimics. We think we do, but we don't. In fact, there's a lot of parents out there who have no clue that we still are wired for role model and mimic. We think role model and mimic is something we do for the first 2 years of our life. No, it is something we do for our entire lives. We do role model and mimic our entire lives. This is really, really important. The next one is repetition. Now, personally, I think repetition is garbage. Coming from somebody who, okay, let me step back for just a minute here. 20 years theater. Memorizing lines, oh yeah, there was a lot of repetition. Music, whenever you do performance, you've got to memorize. Yeah, I am the queen of let's listen to this song for 6 months. That's me. That's me. Some of you are going to hate me, and that's okay. Hate me. I am that person who, when I find a song, I will listen to nothing else. It will be literally on repeat. My favorite was I'm in love with my car. Oh yeah. I watched Bohemian Rhapsody. They mentioned I'm in love with my car, and I went, oh, what are they talking about? This is actually how I found this particular song. I'm in love with my car was, so well, you saw the movie. You know the backstory. But I've had the album, but I didn't. What I had was the platinum edition of Queen, so I didn't have each and every one of their albums. I just had and Freddie doesn't even sing it, so why would I even bother with the song? Because Freddie's voice isn't in it. So when I found this song, around the same time I bought my brand new car. Oh my God, I love my little baby girl. I loved baby girl. Oh my God, I love baby girl. All I did for a year was play, I'm in love with my car. It was like all I did. So repetition does work. Yes. I am not a fan of repetition because I'm a theoretical learner. In order for me to understand it, I still don't memorize. I do. All right, so let me break this down. I got to really logicize this. Rhythm and metric. Rhythm and metric. That is a huge part of this. All I want in my life are pens that work. I do not have it in my heart to throw away old pens. I can't do it. I don't know why. I have a block in my head. It's so minor. I haven't worked out the psychological glitch in my head, but one of these days I'm going to go, let's talk about my trauma of not being able to throw away pens. I think it's because I revere pens so much that I value them even when they're dead. So I have like all of these dead pens in the house. And I need like I can't use that. That's the cat box where they love to sleep. I'm going to have to create like a graveyard for my pens. And just when they die, I have to respectfully put them in the bin. But I can't throw them away. There's going to be a day where my daughter's like, do you have to have all these pens, Mom? And I'm going to be like, bye, sweetheart. Have a good day. And tell me how much you hate school later. And I'm going to be like, don't throw away my pens. So it's like my emotional crutch. All right, focus, metric, rhythm. Those are important. Those are massive, massive things in our brain that says, this is how I learn. Metric, and which is why so many of us are so big on acronyms. What we are really doing with acronyms is we are tapping into that. What are we doing when we're doing acronyms? Why? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I'm never going to forget this. I'm never going to forget. Here I am, 43 years old, going, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And I'm going through algebraic equations with the damn thing. Why? What is it with acronyms that teach us, help us learn? Metric, rhythm. So anyway, back to the focal point here, though, is when we learn, we have role model and mimicking. Now, that's what I want to talk about, because that actually is the you are in our brain. It's when we sit here and we watch our mom and dad do something, and it's a visual. When we watch, it's a visual. But when we hear them speak, why you are. See, I really think it's because the you are is a mirror. I really want to say that you are activates our mirror centers for repetition. Now, the sad story, true story, really, really significant here. When I was a kid, I was so lonely that I would talk to myself in the mirror. And I started this at 8 years old. I knew I was going to be famous. I knew that speech was going to be a big part of it. So I talked to myself in the mirror forever. I mean, 8 years of it. Like every day, I did at least 4 hours every day. To this day, I do this 4 hours every day since I was 8 years old. I talk to myself in the mirror, which is why this is so easy for me, is because I'm going, oh, this is no different than any other monologue I've given since I was 8 years old. Everyone talks to themselves. It's highly healthy. I have a whole thing on this. Anyway, when you talk to yourself in the mirror, oh God, there's so much psych here. I got to slow down. When you talk to yourself in the mirror, you're actually doing the you of I for yourself. So you're mimicking and repeating your own behavior. So if you don your mom's clothes, or you put on any kind of clothing that you adhere to, like if you were to play dress up and then pretend to be the person who you really want to be in front of the mirror, holy fucking shit, what a powerful tool. What a powerful tool, because you are literally providing yourself with your own role model to mimic cognitively on purpose. Now, our brains, this is where our brains are fantastically stupid to our advantage, is it doesn't have to be a literal role model. What it has to be is somebody who is legitimately trying to basically just hardwire, learn, or retrain their system. So in order to pull this off, basically you need a role model and a mimic. which is why in so many inspirational videos or inspirational exercises, you're given a mirror to talk to. Now I'm curious. I want to go back to Rodney Dangerfield's film. There's one film that he did. I can't remember the name of it, where the movie starts off with him in an inspiration motivational class, and he has a mirror and he's talking to it. And I'm wondering if he's saying "you are" or "I am." But it is imperative that you use the words "you are" while looking at yourself in the mirror, because you are activating the role model, mimic, third person. So I want to say that it's a combination of role model, mimic, and third person. I'm thinking here. I'm going somewhere with this. And Tony Robbins does it with his whole you. I don't know if Tony Robbins did it on purpose or because he's talking to you, he's saying you. Now, I notice when we say they, that is when my hostility really gets up there, because when I'm saying they, I'm referring to the people who've abused us. It's really amazing because there's I, myself, then you, who's watching, my audience, and then they, the abusers. And it's like it's extraordinary, because now in my brain, I'm going, you and I, we're comrades against the they, but we don't want that because that's hierarchical, competitive. That's a whole lot of toxic. So I'm trying to figure out a way to start curtailing this and like strategically putting it all down, putting it all in order. So, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I wrote up my triliminals last night. I wrote up my positive affirmations for triliminals. So this is the project I'm working on for triadic healing. Inspiration is part of it. There's levels of it. There's people who there's inspiration, and then there's a knowledge base. There's all of this stuff. And I am a solid theoretical learner. I believe we all are theoretical learners, because when I talk to anybody about theoretical learning, as soon as they hear what it is, they say, "Oh my God, I'm that too." I have yet to hear anyone say that to me. I could say visual learner. Oh, that's not me. Listening learner. Oh yeah, I'm not an audio learner. Hands on. I have to do hands on, but I have to. Somebody has a variation, but consistency is always the clue. It's theoretical learning. Theoretical learning is when you understand the theory clearly. Obviously, it's when you understand the theory. It's when you have to understand the how something works. It's internalizing on such a deep level. But it's time consuming because it takes knowledge. So for me, physics is 100% theoretical learner. I have to comprehend through theory. Now, fortunately, I remember my physics from way back when. So I have a lot of that foundation of how a pulley works, of how I have an I word in my head. Inertia, how inertia works with momentum, and I see it, I get it because of the physics that I took in like the 6th or 7th grade. So I get that. Theoretical learning, when it comes to anything, is absolute dire, and it's absolutely. If I can break this code, if I can simplify this and get it down to such simplicity, I can embed this into triadic healing. This is my plan. I spoke to a beautiful soul the other day named Eugene. Eugene had me watch a movie. He actually gave me an assignment to watch 3 movies. I watched the first one last night, and it was extraordinary. Meet John Doe. My God, it was extraordinary. And this book, I'm sorry, I picked up a book, so my subconscious mind said, book! This movie was so, how do I even begin to explain this movie? It's very relatable today. That's what I'll say about it. 1941. Beautiful film. Beautiful, beautiful film. So here is what I walked away from it. Eugene is basically introducing me to something called solution documentaries. And he has classes that he has invited me to attend for free. So I can literally create a 90-minute documentary on triadic healing. Now, here's how these solution documentaries work. Their goal is to transparency, condition you, and subliminally basically correct the problem in your subconscious mind while you're learning about the subconscious mind. I believe, I know it, that if I do this right, I can cure a person's complete mental profile just by having them watch this movie. I know it. I can see it. I already know what needs to be done. I tried it on my YouTube channel once. I have one of my videos that does this, where in the video, I'm talking to your subconscious mind and I am breaking it down and explaining to you precisely how logic works in the brain and why we have trauma. And I have people commenting, "Oh my God, that released it." Yes. Yeah. It's that simple. Easy is you have to decide if it's easy. Easy and hard are I words, but simple and complex are everybody words. So I'm trying to figure out how to condense this down. Now, I studied learning through Plato. So here's what I know about learning. First, the you are is the most powerful. Second of all, role model and mimicking the role model. And that's it. You have to mimic the role model, but you need to have you have to consciously choose a positive role model. So I would say if you want to relearn how to condition something, select your role model to mimic. Now, this is where Socrates steps in and he gives let's define the archetype. And the archetype is your role model. Now, he does this whole thing about how an archetype cannot be changing. And I strongly disagree with Socrates on that because we are changing. Oh my God, Socrates. Based off of this logic, Socrates is the one responsible for fucking everybody up. And this is how he did it. Because he proves in his theories, using logic, that the archetype must be unchanging. It must be stable. And in order for it to be stable, it cannot change. It must be consistent. Now, here's the problem with that. And a lot of people did. We then turned around based off of his concept, and we then created gods as a model and an archetype. And then we all tried to be like Jesus. And we did this for centuries. Now, here's the problem with this. People change. This is why we have a society that has this concept of, oh, don't change. It's because Socrates said, you have to have an archetype that changes. And when you have this role model mimic learning behavior, and then you put it on an unchanging model, suddenly we're all modeling this concept of, oh, don't change. This is not how humans are. Humans must change. We must grow. So I'm going to respectfully contradict Socrates here and say to Mr. Socrates, dude, gods are fantastic for modeling gods, but when you are a changing human being, you really need an archetype that teaches us and models how to change with dignity. And that's it, change with dignity. So let's do that. Change with dignity. I love that. I know this is going to go on a note card. This is index card worthy. Change with dignity. Change with dignity. All right, so here's the plan. So I'm doing these solution documentaries. I am meeting with my beautiful friend Maury on Friday, and we're going to talk more about sciencey stuff. What I want to know is if I can take his triliminals that he's invented, and if we can work together with Eugene and embed the triliminals into the documentary. That way, while we are doing this, while you're watching the documentary, you are listening to the triliminals at some point and having that conditioned inside of your head going on. I'm going to say for the millionth time, this is going to be absolutely full transparency. Yeah. Now, the list of triliminals that I have here, the list of positive affirmations, are targeted to your limiting beliefs, to your mislogic. And there are, ready for this? There's only 4 mental illnesses. Yeah, watch this. There's codependency. I do not count depression as a mental illness. Not at all. I do not believe that depression is a mental illness. That is not a behavioral defense. It is a consequence. I mean, they all are consequences, but depression is very different. Depression does not develop due to a mental trauma. It's grieving death of the self. That is depression. It is grieving death of the self or loss of the self. That is depression. A loss of the self. And it could be a loved one. When you love someone from a state of love, loving that person integrates into your love system. You assume their love or your love for them as part of your identity. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. When you love someone, not from an emotional prosthetic, not from fear, not from codependency, when you truly love someone, you integrate them into your identity. It is a beautiful thing, which is why when they break up with you and or they die, you go through a grieving process. A breakup is actually depression. It is, a breakup is a type of depression. If you lose your dreams, if you lose your hope for the future you want, if you lose a desire you have, if you lose a loved one, this will, my pen is starting to die. You're going to see this theme going on. You're going to notice that these things trigger a grieving response that can and most usually does lead to depression. Grieving of the self is so different than grieving a loss of anything and everyone else. This is different. It is a loss of the self. Now, codependency is a mental illness. The other one is narcissism. That pen's dead too. Give me just a moment here. Let's try this one. Okay, so narcissism is another, yep, this one works. Okay, so narcissism is the other mental disorder. The other one is borderline personality. Codependency, narcissism, borderline. I'm going to put down addiction, but it's all kind of under the same umbrella. Addiction, self-mutilation, and eating disorders. They're all the same thing. Eating disorders. Okay, so I'm going to say this again. Addiction, self-mutilation, eating disorders. That's all the same thing. They are so absolutely identical to the same mental illness. We actually need a different name for them because it's all enveloping, all encompassing. And that's the first ethic, by the way. Codependency is the second ethic, and narcissism and borderline personality are the third ethic. I'm going to say that again. If you suffer from addiction, self-mutilation, or eating disorders, you lack the first ethic. If you suffer from codependency, you lack the second ethic, and narcissism and borderline is the third ethic. There you go. That's it. Now, Stockholm Syndrome and psychological entrapment. Stockholm Syndrome is actually borderline personality disorder. Bipolar does not exist. Bipolar is ADHD and depression at the same time. Manic is when you have an ADHD episode and you got to garden like 100 feet in 2 hours. Yeah, that's your manic episode. That's just your ADHD kicking in. And then when you have depression, you're going to tank after that because your depression and your ADHD are basically toggling and bouncing it back and forth like a tennis ball. That's all. So if you have bipolar, you have ADHD and depression. ADHD is part of PTSD. Okay, yeah, so PTSD. PTSD is like, all of these are PTSD. Codependency, narcissism, borderline, every one of them has a trigger. So really, it's PTSD. And then under PTSD, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got 5 different triggers, 5 different categories. Well, no, PTSD is the category. So you have, I'm going to say regular PTSD. That's the one that we all know as PTSD. You have codependency, which can be triggered. You have narcissism, which can be triggered. And then you've got borderline, which can be triggered. ADHD is under the regular category. There is substantial evidence that is coming forth every day more and more that ADHD is a subgenre of PTSD, that we did not realize what it was, what we think it was. I have my own theories, and there are other people. Teal Swan, who's another phenomenal psychologist. The fact that she is a psychologist today and I revere her is a clue. Teal Swan is extraordinary, and she's the one who first got me. She presented an argument that ADHD is a subgenre of PTSD, and when I put it through my logical everything, it checks out. Oh my God, is it so clear? My daughter has ADHD, and oh yeah, we have so much fun like taking a look at that. So ADHD is basically when you shrink so much due to trauma that you take all of your external energy and you just try and condense it into a ball inside of you so you can become invisible, to brush under the radar, which is very much a PTSD symptom. Now, here's the fun part. Fun fact. This is science. This is fun, solid fact. Every person with ADHD has PTSD. Every one of them. You do not have ADHD unless you have PTSD. They are inseparable. But you can have PTSD and not ADHD. I have PTSD, but I don't have ADHD. I did not shrink my energy. It's out there. It's all over the place. My daughter, though, she shrank it. She shrank all of it. So, which is why they shake, is because they've taken all their energy from the outside and they put it into the inside. So, if you believe in chakra energy, if you believe in physics with electromagnetic fields, and you believe that the body has, why this isn't a belief, the body does have, according to science and physics, we do have electrical currents, we do have electrical energy all over our bodies. And when somebody is traumatized and they are forced to shrink, they pull all of that inside of them until it's a tight ball. And then they end up shaking and just jittering a lot because they're trying to go under the radar. So ADHD is a subgenre of PTSD, and there's no such thing as having ADHD without trauma, without PTSD. It does not exist. So I am a firm believer on ADHD being a subgenre of PTSD. Codependency, narcissism, and borderline. Now, multiple personality disorder. Okay, so multiple personality disorder is definitely there. Let me think here for a minute. See, that's a symptom of PTSD. All right, I'm going to throw all this out and I'm going to do my own thing, because the mess that every time I try and dabble in their world, it fucks it all up. Perspective abuse is the first one. Perspective abuse will give you PTSD. Everyone's got that one. You cannot have any of these disorders and not have PTSD. So PTSD is kind of the first, that's the big one. And that can evolve to a subform of ADHD. So you've got your codependency. By the way, narcissism and borderline is very much codependency. So you have codependency, which technically then branches off into, okay, so you're codependent. Well, are you the narcissist or are you the borderline? Now, people are like, oh, empaths. I believe that borderline personality disorder is grossly misdiagnosed. Fun fact. Borderline personality disorder and narcissistic abuse syndrome are not acknowledged as actual diagnoses or diseases by the CDC or NIM. Which is why they are almost never diagnosed properly, is because if you end up with one of those diagnoses, your insurance company most likely will not cover it. The psychologists don't want you to know this because they base their diagnosis off of whether or not the insurance company will pay for your mental health, not based off of your symptoms. So, narcissist. Yeah, I remember the day I asked my therapist that, and she did a whole, yeah. So codependency breaks down into two categories. If you are codependent, you're either the narcissist or the borderline. And yes, you can be both at the same time. And then we have the dissociation. Now, I would not call this a mental disorder at all. I would call this part of the, oh, God, I hate these words because they're so not done right and there's no logic to them. Okay, you've got the PTSD, codependency, narcissist, and borderline is definitely the ethics not being learned. That is not due to trauma. That's the ethics not being learned. The first one is codependency. Narcissist is the second one. Borderline is the third one. With codependency, you also have boy, I really want to say that addiction, self-mutilation, and eating disorders, you don't need, no, I do not, I got to think about this. This is just an emotional prosthetic. Codependency is just an emotional prosthetic. But so is narcissism and so is borderline, which is why I've got the umbrella and the flow chart here. My question is addiction, self-mutilation, and eating disorders under codependency? Yeah, I'm going to say it is a spin-off, a branch of codependency, because you cannot have, it's the same thing. It's you lack that first ethics. So it's addiction, self-mutilation, and eating disorders. Okay. And then, yeah, codependency is the second perspective. That's where my third perspective is borderline and narcissism. So it's not a spin-off. It is its own thing. There we go. So you've got codependency, you've got the ethical. So you have the perspective abuse. See, it's not perspective abuse. A perspective abuse is the invasive perspectives. I'm thinking multiple personality disorder. So you have fawn, you have flop, and then you have, and when you flop, you dissociate. That's dissociation. You have emotional frostbite. You have fawn, which is you laugh, you joke, you play around with your abuser to make it look like you're having a good time. It is a defense mechanism. So this is a defense. See, and this is the thing is people say it's the fight or flight response. It's your fear response. And that's where it's like, well, no, because you're supposed to fight. That's your defense system actually working using boundaries. And you're supposed to run away. That's actually your flight system kicking on properly, and you're supposed to run away. That's setting a boundary and then putting distance. You want to fight or flight, but who does that? I mean, the narcissists love to fight. There's a right way to do it. That's anger. But then there's flop and fawn, which have nothing to do with fear. That has to do with total system failure, shutdown. Yes, it has to do with fear. But the other two are actually the defense system working. The others are fear system working. So huge difference. Anything that comes from fight and flight comes from your love system, whereas fawn and flop and emotional frostbite, that comes from your fear system. So it's not your defense system, it's your fear system backup, because your defense system isn't working. If it worked, then you wouldn't be traumatized. You'd be fine. So it's fawn, flop, which is dissociation, emotional frostbite, and then you've got your split personalities. I hate split personalities. Let's not call it that anymore. That's a stupid word for it. And we're not calling it dissociative identity. It's not dissociative identity. I would say it's split identity disorder, split identity disorder, split self. Really what it is you're splitting the conscious mind. That's what you're doing, is you are splitting the conscious mind. That's why you end up with multiple consciousness inside of your head, which is why some of them remember some things and the others don't, is because you've got split consciousness. Memory goes where consciousness goes. So it's split identity disorder. So there's your multiple person. See, it's not personality, multiple identity disorder. Multiple identity disorder. And that's under, yeah. And it's not a form of dissociation. Not at all. Dissociation is emotionless. You have no emotions. It's when you literally internalize, you attack and shut down and start. Yeah, it's something completely different. You can have the two different things. The way they put it down in the books, it looks like it's a hierarchy. It looks like it's a status of first you dissociate and then you have personality disorder. And that's not true. You can go one direction and then another. It's a forked road. It is not a hierarchy. Um, so there's only, let me see here. So this is like a super defense system. It isn't even behavioral defense. It's a full defense system. It's like a backup to your fear system. But the codependency, the narcissist, the borderline, that's all from just ethics not being learned. If you don't learn the first ethics, you're going to have a problem with addiction, self-mutilation, eating disorders. You most likely will. You will, because if you don't know how to self-soothe, self-comfort, self-regulate, self-discipline, then basically your body, your brain finds a different way to do so, which is where the addiction, self-mutilation, and eating disorder comes in. And then ethics not being learned for the second perspective, you get to codependency with your emotional prosthetic, and that's where you end up using religion as a codependent. And then the third perspective is your narcissist or your borderline, and that splits. So that's it. Stockholm Syndrome is actually part of borderline. And then depression, I still no. Depression is just, yeah, I know what that is. That is prolonged grief. That is an inability to comfort yourself while you're grieving. And that's, again, linked to the first ethic. There's something basically, it is, I would have to say that it's basically a kind of emotional dysregulation disorder. That's what I would call it. Emotional dysregulation disorder. If I were to say that, then this makes sense. Then I would put fawn flop, emotional frostbite, split multiple personality disorder, and depression all under emotional dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation is when you basically try and stopper up all of your emotions. And this is the order of operations if you choose to do that. So stoppering up your emotions, emotional dysregulation disorder is, but the whole society is taught how to do this. Our society runs off of emotional dysregulation. Like that is a whole, yeah, we have a cheering squad for how to throw away your emotions because that's the right thing to do. Don't do that. Don't do that. So the reason why I had to lay all that out is because while I'm creating these triliminals, I know exactly this is what I need. This is what I need. This is me planning out these triliminals because I want to embed. You have a limiting belief with each and every one of these triliminals. Every one of them. Or I'm sorry, you have a limiting belief with every one of these. So what a person has a limiting belief with every one of these. So the first one for depression is you are valuable. You are worthy. You are lovable. You know, my partner said that to me one time. He told me I was unlovable. It was in the middle of it was the day he broke up with me. And I realized later that he wasn't talking about me. He was talking about himself. When I asked him about it, because it bothered me, he has no memory of it. He has such severe, so when you have complete shutdown, you also have severe amnesia. That's due to emotional shutdown. He doesn't believe he's lovable. You are lovable. You are lovable. I have a feeling I'm going to try a little science experiment. The best thing is, if I'm wrong, it does no harm. It's fantastic. I'm telling you, you are lovable. So you are valuable. You are lovable. The other one, see, with narcissism and borderline, they also believe that they're not lovable. They also believe that they're not valuable. But they also don't know what love is. Love is caring. Love is caring. I'm trying to figure out how to create a subliminal message to reverse one's definition of love. With inspiration, we are looking at the you are term. And you are basically doing a lot of positive affirmation in the you are form with a transference of energy, logic, excitement. And you are using the mimic and role model learning skill. It's mimic and role model with energy, logic, and excitement. So I want to say to you that you absolutely can do what it is you want to do. You can do anything. You absolutely can overcome every obstacle that you think you have in your life. It isn't that there's obstacles. It's that we are so, I see it now. When you talk negatively, we switch over to the words we are. I see public speakers doing this all the time, because when you use the words you are, see, when I say we are programmed and we are taught to not see solutions. We are taught to not see solutions. You know, there's some positive affirmations that I have where when I'm looking at the positive affirmations, when I hear them, they're telling me to open my mind to solutions. But that's not what got me through my trauma. I did not open my mind to solutions. I created them. And this is what I did this last weekend. I created my own solutions. I did not open my eyes to them. I counted my resources and then I created my solutions because I didn't have any. I didn't look for opportunity. I created opportunity, which tells me we need to create our own opportunity, which means you have the resources to create your own opportunity. It's a skill. You just don't know how to do the skill yet, but it's learnable. We think that we can't learn. We have this thing in our head that says, I'm not capable of change. This is all Socrates' fault, because he said that we don't change. He said that our archetype doesn't change. So it put that embedded thing in us that says, oh, there's no change. So now we have this resistance to change thousands of years later because we all started repeating, copying this role model. And the problem with that is we now believe that we can't change. We can change. You can change. Absolutely. You just don't know how. There's just no skill set. The skills for learning how to change starts with, what do you want? You have to define what you want. And then once you define what you want, not easy, I know, I'm well aware of it. Easy and hard is for you to decide. Simple, yes, it's simple, but it might not be easy or hard. That's for you to decide. You decide what it is you want. You decide where you want this thing and who you want to serve. You decide why you want this thing. And then I know I have the ability to speak very well, very powerfully. I also have the ability to break down psychology in such a way that I can sit down, break down any concept, and turn it into something powerful and useful. Now, the powerful, useful that everyone could use is positive affirmation. But let's amp that up. Let's say, okay, I can do this positive affirmation, but what's better than positive affirmation? Inspiration. What is the biggest problem that we have with people today? They're not awake. They're not aware. They're not alert. They don't know that there's a problem because they're on autopilot. So the biggest problem is that autopilot because they're not curious. Because we're not curious. We need to get curious. We need to get off of autopilot. That's the problem. You get yourself off of autopilot. You become aware. To get yourself off of autopilot, you've got to become educated. You educate yourself. Then you start counting your resources. What do you have at your disposal? What can you do? Not what you're good at. Never ask what you are good at. That is the worst question in the world because you can be taught. You can learn. See, this is a good positive affirmation. You can learn. I'm going to add that to my list here. Let me go over to my triliminals because that's it right there. Is a lot of people don't think they can change. You can learn. You can change. You can grow. But that learning is a big deal. Once you realize that you can learn, that you can change, that you don't have to be good at a skill to want to do it. And that's one of those toxic beliefs that's floating around our society. Well, what are you good at? No, don't ask what you're good at. Never ask what you're good at. No 5-year-old is good at anything except coloring. No, no, no. Stop asking what you're good at. Ask instead what you want to do, what you do want to get good at. Because now you have a direction. But that whole, well, what am I good at? Well, if you have never done anything, are you listening, Daniel? You don't ask yourself what it is you're good at. Ask yourself what you want to get good at and then do it. Do it until you have mastered it. And because you love doing it, you're going to get good at it. You're going to have joy and so much fun. And when you have joy and fun, when you do what you love to do, you are going to learn at such an exponential rate. But do it also with the role model in mind, because that's going to absolutely propel you forward. You want to learn, you can learn. Learning is simple. It's a skill. It's just one that is not taught in our society because it died with Rome. But I'll show you how to do it. It's mimic, it's repetition. It is consciously choosing a role model. It is consciously getting yourself off of autopilot. Oh, yeah. I'm going to do a whole thing just on autopilot and how to get yourself off of autopilot because really, that's it. My whole thing, everything I do is either I work with celebrity or I work with celebrity-sized people trapped in small lives. This is what I do. And there's no feeling that describes what I went through better than I was a celebrity-sized person trapped in a small life. Holy shit, that was my existence. And you can feel it. Everyone can feel it. It's your potential. It's when you know you're this big and you're forced to shrink down. We live in a society that shrinks us. We have an entire list of words that will grow you. But if you go near those grow words, we'll be punished for it. That is what I call the list of banned God words. The God words that we've been banned from touching, shamed from touching, are your grow words. And we've been spoon-fed these shrink words, turned invisible, forced to shrink down until we're nothing. And then we use the word humble to glorify our own submission. Stop doing it. Become aware of it. Choose the grow words. Identify them. I'll give you the list. And when you identify your grow words, go toward them. Seek it out. And I'm going to tell you right now, the conditioning is going to kick in. You got to fight the conditioning because you are up against your brainwashing. We all have been brainwashed. We've been brainwashed so perfectly that we're unaware of it and that we're brainwashing each other every time we gaslight without realizing that's what we're doing. And because we have lost complete consciousness and awareness and education of this, it just keeps cycling back over. It ends when you realize that you have the ability to take control of all of this. But they have taught you that you have no control because they wanted you to be submissive with their shrinking degradation mindset. That's really what you're trapped in, is the degradation mindset kept there from shrinking words that are completely embedded in our society. Become aware of them. Wake up. Get yourself off of autopilot and then seek out the grow words. The words, it does everything. This is why inspirational talks are so powerful, is because inspirational talks are that key link that go right into your subconscious mind, identify the core of the problem. It can reverse the logic. It can undo the shrink words. It can release the harm and trigger on you. It can feed you the grow words that you need. It can wake you up if it's done strategically right. I am so going to become a positive, inspirational speaker, but I'm going to do it on purpose with psychology. But I'm not going to do it just to do it. I want to sit down and literally, when I am done with you, I want you to have no mental illness. We are logical. We are not stupid. We are not crazy. We are logical. We are so fucking logical. The problem is, Gene Roddenberry did not know it, but he conditioned so many generations of thinkers and peoples. And the people who gravitated to Star Trek, God, I love Star Trek, but goddamn, is it fucking toxic. I idolized Spock to the point where I completely removed all of my emotions. I rejected my emotions, not because society told me to, fuck society, but because Spock told me to. I idolized him so much that I wanted to reach that state of pure logic. But in order to do so, I absolutely shut down all of my emotions. Screw McCoy. I didn't care what McCoy said. I didn't want to be human because I did not like the imperfection of emotions. So here I was, right there with all of the scientists and all of the nerds, glorifying and idolizing Spock, shunning our emotions and shutting them down and thinking that we're illogical. Wrong. Gene Roddenberry wrote a fictitious character that we all idolized, and it embedded this massive toxic belief. Now, here's the problem. Those same people went on to become great thinkers of the world, to create science that they then trickled down, believing that we're illogical, believing that emotions have no point, no purpose. Now you've got some great, powerful thinkers in the world conveying Gene Roddenberry's lesson. Creatives, writers, musicians are our most powerful asset in this world, which is why I target celebrities to heal, because they are the ones who influence our world. When I was studying history, there were two resources that popped up over and over again: the wars and the art. If somebody wasn't killing somebody, usurping somebody, and murdering and committing genocide, then they were recording our culture. Our culture is our art. I cried when the Notre Dame Cathedral burned. I cried when I watched Monumental Men and watched them burn the artwork. You don't burn books. You don't burn art. That's our culture. Because I've seen what happens, Scotland, when you remove a culture. You destroy the people. You wipe them from the books. There is a group of people. I cannot tell you their names because they are so unknown that even their name has been lost to common man. This is the culture that existed around the Jamaica area. Christopher Columbus committed genocide to the point where they are extinct. Their language is lost. Their religions are lost. the people are lost. I can't even tell you their name. That is the power of what war can do when you take out a culture. Our artist today is our culture. Lady Gaga is our culture. Robin Williams, Matthew Perry, they are our culture. They are the ones who really have power in their hands. They are the culture shapers of our world. The scientists and the technology and the innovation discoveries. You can look up food. It's called the Food Timeline. It's a really fucking thing. Do it. It is amazing. You can look up and research food. You can research and look up wars. You can research and look up invention, and you can research and look up art. That's it. Food, war, invention, art. That is your culture. That is what is going to survive us. That's it. Each individual person contributes to these four concepts. Oh, this is so sociology. Food, war, invention, art. If we don't take care of our celebrities, if we don't take care of our culture, we lose something precious to who we are. With the Battle of Culloden, this was the last battle, last war fought on English soil. That's what they say in the history books. And for some reason, they do not count the London Blitz. And I think it's because bombs were dropped, but no actual soldier ever touched foot on English soil during World War II. They just dropped bombs on London. So London Blitz is not counted as a battle that took place in London. That being said, the last battle to be fought on English soil was the Battle of Culloden. After the battle was lost, the English passed laws that no language of the Scots was to be spoken. To this day, in both Ireland and Scotland, if a grandparent speaks to the newer generations in Gaelic or Scottish, the parents will scream and interfere because the parents associate the language with fear and danger. The languages are dying out as a result. We are going to see the end of Irish Gaelic and Scottish Gaelic as a result. They are going to go extinct because in the 1770s, 1740s, the English passed a law that said it's illegal to speak the language. They banned the kilts and the wearing of the plaids. They targeted the culture. If you look at the way English does things when they imperialize, this is how they fight. The English take out a culture. When you take out the culture, you lose the people. You lose everything. The culture needs to be as preserved as the people. And it's something that people are completely unaware of. This is the shit you learn from sociology, is the impact of a culture. When a culture was left untouched, my research in sociology was easy. Christians were notorious for wiping out a culture. Ireland is almost untouched. Thank you, St. Patrick. Thank you. Because of, and here's the best part. When Rome conquered Greece, instead of wiping out the mythology, they adopted it, which actually kept the Greek culture alive, which kept the Greek mythology, the Greek people alive. If Rome had not done that, there would be no Greece today. There. How's that for insight and impact? Think about it. The reason why we have the Greek people today is because Rome decided to adopt the myths instead of make them extinct, like they did everything else. Culture is the people. Culture is vital to who we are. I'm going to crack this. I'm going to crack this code, and then I'm going to utilize it and put together a hodgepodge of this is how we're going to fix the world. I have plans. All right. Thank you so much. May the kindest of words always find you.